Businesses that invest in disability and specifically disabled employees in their workplaces have higher profits. This is the logical answer. I'm a logical person. I'm never going to tell people to do something that doesn't actually make sense because I wouldn't do it. But in this case, it makes sense for everyone. Make people feel like they belong, build up people's confidence when they're great at their jobs, and give people the tools that they need to be successful. Win, win, win. I'm Emma, and I have Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome. I've also worked everywhere from Michelin star restaurants to high-stakes consulting firms, so I've heard it all. And here on Realistic Resilience, we're talking about what it's really like navigating the workplace and life with a disability. No sugarcoating here. Today we're talking about microaggressions, those tiny jabs that are often well-intentioned, but can really hurt your confidence, make you question your competence, and remind you that you're not expected to be there in the workplace or that you don't belong. And yes, I've got stories and solutions. So let's get into it. So what even is a microaggression? A microaggression is something that someone says or does that might seem harmless, but comes with a jab, kind of like a backhanded compliment in a way. When it comes to disability, it might sound like, "You're so brave for continuing to work when you're in pain," or my all-time favorite, "But you look fine." So I'm going to walk through how I typically tackle these in the workplace and how I'm building a better, more inclusive culture on my teams. You may feel comfortable speaking up for yourself in your personal life, but when it comes to being in a workplace, it adds some additional challenges and complexities, which makes speaking up for yourself even harder. So let's break down the 3 most common types of microaggressions when it comes to disabled people, along with examples of what this actually sounds like in real life. The first one is invalidating competence, or questioning if you can really do your job based on nothing, but specifically based on you having a disability or being different. Whether it's subtle or straight up obvious, it can be really harmful. For me, what this has looked like is proactively, I'm gonna put that in quotes because I feel like it's not necessarily proactive, you'll get it, proactively removing me from projects thinking that people are being nice. For context, I disclosed about parts of my chronic illness and the fact that I was getting iron infusions. This is something that wasn't that big of a deal for me. Going to hospitals, having treatments, taking more medications, it's kind of the normal. So me disclosing, I thought I was opening up and just being a little bit more forward as opposed to saying I have an appointment on Friday. I said I have an infusion on Friday. That manager took that information and thought that I was asking for help. Instead of asking, do you need help? Do you need things taken off your plate? They proactively found someone else to take over the project, started the process of transitioning the work to them without talking to me. Afterwards, they came to me excited and said, "Don't worry, you can take all the time you need. We have found someone for this project." See, they said it as though it really was a good thing. But I had been doing these infusions for months. This wasn't something new. I didn't need help. I didn't need an accommodation. I didn't need things taken off my plate. I understand why they drew that conclusion, but in reality, they assumed that me having a medical issue meant that I no longer could handle this project. That had never been the case, never continued to be. I was able to tell my manager at the time that that's not what I needed, that I felt confident and excited to continue on this project, and that in fact, this wasn't anything new. I'd been getting these infusions for months, and I would continue to, and that no adjustments were needed. You see how they can be well-intentioned, they can seem harmless, but really that was such a scary experience for me because I felt in an instance, I opened up and immediately my biggest project that I've been working on for months was gone. Because I was honest about the issues I was going through. Just ask. Number 2 is invalidating your physical space. This might mean talking over you, repeating what you're saying as if it's your own information, not listening when you're there, or lastly, making it so that you're not physically able to be present. Some of the ways that I've been made to feel like I am clearly not meant to belong is when there's a 2-mile walk to get to a meeting. When the meetup is at 11 p.m. at a bar and I don't drink. When we go to a restaurant that has a preset menu where I can't eat anything. These small factors of lack of consideration, not listening when you speak up and say, I need something a little bit different. All of these can be so invalidating. And the last one, the most common one to happen, especially in the workplace, is gaslighting. It's downplaying your experience. It's telling you that your experience isn't what you think it is. The one that comes up most commonly for me is after we finish a business meal and everyone stands up and people start to pull out their phones to get an Uber and someone inevitably says, we should just walk. That was a heavy meal. We all need it. It's good for us. There's nothing wrong with this. Walking's great. Big proponent. And also, walking that far with my disabilities is just not it. Can I walk that far? Sure. In good sneakers, when I stretch, when I prepare, when I warm up. If I do that in heels, in flats, after an 8-hour workday, after a 12-hour workday, in the snow, in the cold, trying to run after my coworkers who are all male and have much longer legs than me, I walk slowly. So for me in those moments, sure, I can speak up and say, actually, I'm just going to take an Uber. I'll meet you back there. More often than not, though, I've been confronted with, you should just walk too. It's not that far. It's good for you. You should walk too. No, we're all walking. You should walk with us. Again, I understand the intention. I understand the thought. But for someone like me, originally, I would be pressured to walk. I'd say, yeah, you're right. I'll come with you. I didn't want to miss out on the networking opportunities that might come up while we're walking from lunch back to the meeting room. And yes, this happens on a regular basis. It's these tiny, tiny actions and activities that stack and they build up. And they can take such a hit towards your confidence. They can take a hit towards whether you belong there or not. When you have a group of 30 people and 29 people go together and you're that one, it's hard to not feel like you don't belong there. When everyone goes out and shares a family-style meal at a restaurant where you can eat literally nothing, it's hard to feel like you belong there. Look, I know that these actions seem so small, but when you deal with them 5, 10, 20, 50 times in just one day, every day throughout your career, it really can take a toll on your confidence, as well as your perception of your own competence. When you're doubted repeatedly, made to feel like your opinion isn't as valuable, it's hard to not take that personally and start questioning yourself. And ultimately, one of the biggest factors that no one thinks about is all of this energy that is spent towards dealing with and handling all of these little chips away at your confidence is all effort and energy that can be actually spent towards being more productive at your work. It makes you less productive. It makes you less confident in your work. And ultimately, it makes you deliver less. It really is a lose-lose for everyone involved. And it's not just about individuals. It's been proven time and time again that companies that address microaggressions and aggressions towards minorities in the workplace consistently have lower turnover, higher innovation, and even higher profits. Specifically, there was a study done by Accenture just last year that businesses that invest in disability and specifically disabled employees in their workplaces have higher profits. This is the logical answer. I'm a logical person. I'm never going to tell people to do something that doesn't actually make sense because I wouldn't do it. But in this case, it makes sense for everyone. Make people feel like they belong, build up people's confidence when they're great at their jobs, and give people the tools that they need to be successful. Win, win, win. Let's do it, right? So here's the thing. You're not helpless. Sure, microaggressions are super negative and they have a hugely negative impact, but you are not helpless in this situation. It can make you feel helpless. It has made me feel helpless, trust me. You are not helpless. So here's the information that I wish someone told me about how to handle microaggressions when you do have to face them. And as you become more aware of them, you can better advocate for yourself, advocate for others, and create a culture within the workplace that you really believe in. So here's how. So step 1, what do you do if the microaggression is towards you, if you're the disabled person? First off, it's not your job. It might be counterintuitive for me to say you don't have to respond after building up the fact that you're not helpless, but ultimately it is not your job to break down the nuances of your body or your needs in order to put people in their place or correct them. It is your right to. You can, and I'm going to give you a tool so that you can, but you do not have to. This is a you decision, and each time it happens is a new decision. You have to make for yourself. However, if you do want to respond in these situations, one of the ways that I typically do it is to say, hey, I know you didn't mean it that way, but that comment really rubbed me the wrong way. Or, I know you probably didn't mean that, but it really didn't sit well with me. Or, I don't really agree with what you just said. Or, I'm not comfortable with what you just said. The most direct and my favorite, which makes people actually think, is just to say, ouch. If someone says something that is really hurtful, and maybe it's under a thin veil of something that makes it socially or politically correct, just say, ouch. Everyone knows that means that something they said hurt. And if nothing else, it will make them think for just one moment about what it could be. Gives you a chance to address it at that moment, or even come back to it later by putting almost like an ouch bookmark to say, not cool, I'll be coming back to this, or not cool, acknowledging even if we don't have the opportunity to talk about it right now. But what if you see this happen to someone else and it's not you that it's towards? This happens all the time. And I will say, this is one of the ways that I've been able to create a network of professional allies as well as peers that I really can trust, is by acting like an ally. When you see something happen, it is your chance to step in and to do the right thing. One easy way to do this is if you hear someone get cut off, is by simply saying, oh, actually, excuse me, I don't think that Emma was done speaking. Just like that. You're using your voice in order to stand up for someone whose voice is not being heard. That is impactful. There have probably been about 3 or 4 people in my career that have ever done this for me, and I remember each and every instance. They weren't all high-stakes conversations, because ultimately, when you're spoken over, when you're cut off, especially when you're more junior, when you come already with disabilities feeling like you're at a disadvantage, something like that of being cut off can really hurt your confidence and make it so you don't speak up next time. When someone says, not only do I hear you, but I see what just happened and I'm going to stop it, that allows you to use your voice in such a small way that makes such a big impact. And lastly, what if you're a leader or a manager? My biggest recommendation is to be proactive. You want to create a culture that is rooted in inclusivity, where people feel like they can be comfortable speaking up when they hear something wrong, where it's normalized to not only ask people if they're okay and if they need anything, but to listen to what they say in response. And lastly, to create a culture where people don't have to beg for the support and the validation that they need, and instead, where you proactively give it. That's how I approach managing my team today. Don't wait for people to raise the red flag on your team. If you see that there's something wrong, do something. Create a protocol for speaking up. Find a bias buster. And if you don't know what I'm referring to, go read Just Work. But by creating the tools so that your team can actually speak up, be heard, and when something goes wrong, because things will inevitably go wrong, there are protocols and ways that people can make sure that these problems are resolved, that microaggressions don't continue to spiral and expand, and instead they're busted immediately, so that people with disabilities can continue to thrive in the workplace. Have you ever been on the receiving end of microaggressions or seen it happen to people around you? Drop your favorite response down below. Because here on Realistic Resilience, your voice matters, and I certainly want to hear it. Inclusion isn't just about being nice and adding captions, though those are certainly not bad starting points. Inclusion is all about making accessibility a part of everything that you do, as opposed to an exception or a quick add-on at the end. It's part of the core thought process. It's about respecting what people need and recognizing that what people need and what people want are different. And that's okay. When you start off with the assumption that we're all the same, you're not set up for success. But when you go in saying, just because something works for me doesn't mean it will work for everyone else, you're in a much better place to be able to enter relationships, to support your coworkers in a completely different way by not walking in with presumptions which just might not be correct, and in all honesty, probably aren't. And lastly, creating space for people without making them beg for it. You may have seen people in the workplace that really fought for their seat at their table. I made it clear when I was being excluded from conversations that I belonged in, when people were doing things that made it so that my voice could not be heard or that credit wasn't where it should be. But ultimately, people shouldn't need to beg. They should be accepted and welcomed from the get-go. That being said, not every room will be accessible. Not every group or company will create a space for you at their table. That is critical information for understanding where you belong, because you deserve to feel like you belong, because you should belong and feel welcomed without needing to beg. These are some of the core values that I prioritize with my team. I want to make sure that everyone on my team feels like they have someone they can talk to, a way that they can be honest and transparent if things come up, but also that it's a safe space for people to come to me and say, things are not working, whether it be my hours, the number of projects, who I'm working with, the types of work, my future opportunities, and they can be honest. Do I have all the answers? No. But it starts by saying, I need something. Can you help me work towards that? Or can you help me see if that's possible? Because I might not have the answer, but I'm certainly going to try. Because if I have a great performer on my team and something's not working for them, it is in my best interest to make sure that they get what they need. So of course I'm going to work towards that. When you approach inclusion in that way, where you're not assuming that you're creating a culture where everyone needs to fit this perfect mold of what your team looks like, but instead say, the values of my team are authenticity, work quality, interpersonal relationships, and trust. What you're able to build is so much greater, both as a collaborative team, but also just work output. Like, we work well. Microaggressions don't need to be allowed to be harmful, but calling out microaggressions don't need to be allowed to be effective. If you've ever felt like you were the only one that was dealing with things like this, please know that you're not. Here on Realistic Resilience, we're trying to make it clear that we have a community here, not founded based on being hurt by others or by the microaggressions that we face, but by our capabilities, by our resilience, by our ability to keep fighting even when the rest of the world doubts our ability to really perform. So if you learned something new, share this video, subscribe for more honest takes about what it's like navigating the workplace and life with a disability. Remember, you don't get to choose the cards that you're dealt, but you do get to pick how you play the game. So until next time, gentle hugs. Bye, friends.